Welcome back. For both Democrats and Republicans, the rising popularity of the third party this year likely brings back memories of Ralph Nader's presidential run in 2000. Nader racked up nearly 100,000 votes in Florida alone that year as a Green Party candidate. Republican George Bush won in Florida over Democrat Al Gore by 537 votes, just 537, an outcome that decided the election. Ralph Nader joins me live in just a few moments, but first, if you think so-called fringe candidates don't make a difference, think again. Our Randy Kay reports.
No third-party candidate has ever reached the Oval Office, but that doesn't mean they didn't have a hand in who did. Back in 1912, former President Teddy Roosevelt left the Republican Party and ran on the Progressive Party, or Bull Moose ticket. Roosevelt essentially split the Republican vote with incumbent William Howard Taft. It likely cost Taft the presidency, handing the Oval Office to Democrat Woodrow Wilson instead. Fast forward to 1968, and another third-party candidate shook things up. This time it was George Wallace.
Wallace has the courage to stand up for America. Give him your support.
The former governor of Alabama was considered a segregationist Democrat, opposing civil rights and fueling fear in America.
It's a sad day in our country that you cannot walk even in your neighborhoods at night or even in the daytime.
Wallace ran on the ticket for the American Independent Party. By pulling conservative Democratic votes, he cost Democrat Hubert Humphrey the election. Republican Richard Nixon walked away with the win. In 1992, it was Ross Perot's turn to shake up the race.
Good afternoon. The volunteers in all 50 states have asked me to run as a candidate for President of the United States.
The Texas billionaire ran as an independent and focused his presidential campaign on the national debt.
Decide who you think will do the job. Pick that person in November, because believe me, as I've said before, the party's over and it's time for the cleanup crew.
On Election Day, Perot snagged 19% of the popular vote, likely costing Republican George H.W. Bush a second term. Then Governor Bill Clinton got the win. Bush refused to discuss Perot years later in the HBO documentary 41.
Can you talk a little bit about Ross Perot?
No, can't talk about him. I think he cost me the election. I don't like him.
Ralph Nader played the spoiler in 2000. He won just 2.7% of the vote nationwide, but pulled in more than 97,000 votes in Florida. Republican George W. Bush beat Democrat Al Gore in Florida by just 537 votes. If most of Nader's supporters had voted for Gore instead, Gore would have won Florida and been elected president.
Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd president of the United States.
When Nader was questioned about his campaign's role in Gore's loss, he brushed it off.
By the way, I do think that Al Gore cost me the election, especially in Florida. And that's far greater concern than whether I was supposed to help elect Al Gore.
In 2016, an election year where both major party candidates have a likability problem, third-party candidates see an opening once again. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Randy, thank you. And for all of you watching, do not expect to see a third-party candidate on stage during this year's presidential debates unless their polling changes pretty significantly. A federal judge yesterday dismissing a lawsuit claiming that the Presidential Debate Commission had violated antitrust laws and the First Amendment by excluding the third-party candidates from this year's debate. Well, they have to hit 15% to be involved in those debates. Let's talk to a man with plenty of experience in third-party politics, Ralph Nader. Ran for president twice as a Green Party candidate, twice as an independent. He joins me now on the phone. Thank you for being with me, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Poppy.
All right. Gary Johnson was in a fascinating town hall this week with our Anderson Cooper. Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein will be in one shortly. They're gaining traction, right? But they're still far behind Clinton, far behind Trump in the polls. Is victory for them unrealistic?
Well, it isn't a two-party rigged system which has a private corporation deciding who gets on the presidential debates or who doesn't. I mean, that's pretty clear. The only way a third-party candidate can reach tens of millions of voters, no matter how widespread their campaign is in 50 states, is to get on the presidential debate. and they're excluded because it's a private corporation founded by the Republican Democratic parties and funded by corporations, and they decide what kind of candidates are visible to the voters of America. That's why people often say it's a rigged system.
So let's talk about the word rigged. But man, this is everyone's favorite word this week, I'll tell you. Donald Trump came out. He said, look, the election system is rigged. President Obama in his press conference on Thursday brushed that off and sort of said, how can you how can you say that that is the case? You say the word rigged. What do you make of the way that Trump said that the election system is rigged? Is he right?
Well, I don't know what he means. Maybe the vote count in close elections in Ohio or Florida can be.
Well, many were also saying that he was believed that he was pointing to some of those voter ID laws that were overturned in North Carolina, for example.
Yeah. Well, whatever he says, the key here is if we don't have a competitive democracy, giving people more voices and choices, and that's why third and fourth parties and independent candidates are important, we're not going to make much change in this country. I mean, the very use of the word spoiler only applied to third-party candidates is a bigoted word, because if we all have an equal right to run for election in this country, we're all trying to get votes from one another. Either we're all spoilers or none of us are spoilers. Third-party candidates are not to be treated as second-class citizens. And historically, Poppy, the third parties who never won a national election led the way in the abolition drive against slavery, women's right to vote, the worker-farmer reforms of the late 19th century, and most of the social safety nets in the 20th century, including Social Security, Medicare, and the 40-hour week. So we got to get over this siphoning votes away from this and that, but it's only applied to third parties. It's not applied to the major parties, which is why I made that point about Gore costing me the election. 250,000 Democrats in Florida in 2000 voted for Bush. 250,000. Buchanan ran in Florida. I suppose he siphoned votes away from Bush. We got to get over this spoiler siphon and go for more voices and choices on the ballot, new agendas, new energies, new people, for the American people to have a real choice.
Now, you sound like a candidate in this election, my friend, but really, honestly and seriously on that point, when you look at a third party and you look at perhaps elections after this, what do you think makes for a sustainable third party? Meaning, does it take, multiple third parties coalescing to one additional major party to make it work?
The first thing that makes a third party possible is a multi-billionaire. If former Mayor Bloomberg ran, it would have been a three-way race. He would have gotten media. He would have gotten polls. That's number one. The second way a third party can grow to some stature is to start very early and a very broad base, like representing a left-right coalition, not just left, not just right, but saying, look, we got to change the tax system, we got to get criminal justice reform, we've got to have a living wage, we should have universal health insurance, we should de-bloat the military budget, we should push for civil liberties, and we should get rid of crony capitalism. A lot of these are supported left-right, which means 70% or more, and it's an unstoppable political force.
So, Ralph Nader, I want to keep this conversation going, including talking about some pretty scathing opinion pieces you've written about both Clinton and Trump and what that means for your vote come November. Why don't you stay with me? We're going to take a quick break. More with Ralph Nader next. All right, we're back with former presidential candidate Ralph Nader. Thank you for being with me, sir. Let's continue the conversation. You wrote a recent op-ed in the Huffington Post. Here's part of it. The best thing Hillary Clinton has going for her is the self-destructive, unstable, unorganized, fact and truth-starved, egomaniacal, cheating, plutocratic Donald Trump. Given that, who are you casting your ballot for in November?
I never divulged my vote, but you can surmise I'm not going to vote for either Clinton or Trump. There are third-party candidates available for people who want to cast a vote of conscience or who want to highlight the agenda of the third party. You can write in your vote, and I hope someday we'll have a binding none of the above on all ballots so people can vote no to the candidates, a vote of no confidence that actually means something, and if it gets more than any of the other candidates, it cancels that line on the ballot and orders new elections. Binding none of the above. I think 90% of the people would favor that, and it keeps people from staying home.
One thing you said to me before the break was that for a third party to actually win the presidency, it sounded to me like you were saying they have to be a billionaire candidate. And you mentioned former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. Is that right? Is that the only hope?
Not the only one, the only practical one. The one consequence from Trump's candidacy is going to increase the likelihood of some billionaires running for office, not just for president, but for Senate and governorship. You can already see it now. Mark Cuban is, making signs, the owner of the Dallas Maverick basketball team, Tom Steyer and others. So I think we're going to see more of that in 2018, 2020. But I hope to see a grassroots effort like Bernie Sanders mobilized. That came out of the blue. Nobody predicted that one. Nobody predicted he could raise $225 million in $27 average contributions. So I don't think that's off the charts in the coming years, especially with the Internet and the example that Bernie Sanders established. And I think now he should lead a nonpartisan civic mobilization with a huge rally on the Mall in Washington right after Labor Day, and then take it around the country, pushing his agenda, not pushing any candidate. It may redound to the benefit of the Democrats, but so what? But he has a role other than just going around the country being, emitting cliches about Hillary Clinton, who during one debate said she was unqualified by reason of bad judgment to become president.
Yeah, not sure if we'll see that in September. He just has an op-ed in the LA Times today, really vehemently getting behind Clinton. But who knows? Perhaps after the election. I'm very interested in who you would have liked to see run for president this go around that did not get in the race.
Well, first of all, there are a lot of good people nobody heard of. There are people, in the labor community, people in universities who are accomplished people, but they're not celebrities. So I have to give you someone, that you might know. I think Senator Sherrod Brown, Elizabeth Warren would have been good candidates. Senator Ed Markey would be a good candidate. There are some governors from time to time. If Jerry Brown wanted to run, I think he would have had a good chance because he's such a winner in California, and he knows how to appeal to fiscal conservatives and social liberals. The point is the political recruitment system of the two-party tyranny is very bad. It pushes out good people from wanting to go into politics, which they see as a dirty word and a mess, and they don't want to have any part of it. And so when bad politicians drive out good politicians, like Gresham's law, bad money drives out good money, the people are the losers. And if people always keep saying politics is dirty, if people make politics into a dirty word, Poppy, why should they be surprised when they get dirty politics?
Ralph Nader, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Poppy. It is all up to the people.
Power to the people. Really nice to have you on. Thank you for calling in. Also, for all of you watching, look out for his forthcoming book, Breaking Through Power. Coming up next, the fight against Zika goes aerial. Florida's new steps to contain the virus.